Simply, you understand, when a person comes and he suddenly does an immeasurable amount for people. Why, that's not a person, that's God. No, I mean something else, something else. And he does an immeasurable amount for people. He does what no one has ever done. For all his people, he does what no one has ever done. Free education, free medicine, a 5-day work week, maternity leave, which to this day does not exist in many countries. What else? Mandatory employment. You can fire someone only through the trade union. You cannot just throw someone out. Houses of culture are built, houses of pioneers, houses of creativity, and the Far East, and Siberia, and the Urals, and Central Asia. Education, literacy, everyone is taught to be literate, libraries are built. This has never existed before. Suddenly a person comes who gives so much to everyone. You are such an uneducated person, this is... How old are you? 46. This is a horror. I myself was completely stupid to an outrageous degree, but you have simply even outdone me. All that you listed is mega harmfulness, Satanism. Education is mandatory. For what purpose did secondary education become mandatory? All over the world. What you listed was being done all over the world at that time. In America, and in France, and in Soviet Russia, and in China a little later, and in Hitler's Germany. This was a worldwide industrialization, a design of cursed, sorcerer scientists, which the leaders of countries carried out, and at the head of this stood London, the English Academy of Sciences, called the English Royal Society. And through their colonies, and all countries of the world were already colonies of London by that time, they gave directives. Where to build which roads, where to lay which railway, where ports should be, who digs what, who supplies what to whom, where automobiles are made, and so on. And under this pretext, it was necessary that people have education. Before that, people always knew how to count and read universally. Listen further. You ask me, I answer you, as the chairman of the Society of Lovers of Ancient Writing. Few knew how to write, because writing was a craft that was necessary in order to record either for a prince or for a czar, something there for the authorities. There were scribes. It was such a job, a craft, or the copying of the Bible and other books of Holy Scripture of the Holy Fathers. Standing monks were engaged in this. Therefore, people did not need to write. They had no reason to write, but everyone without exception knew how to count. Why? Because everyone always traded or bought or sold, and therefore everyone counted. Especially women counted well, as always in any family. And numbers were written with letters. In the old Slavic language, numbers are letters. And therefore whoever knew how to count, by definition also knew how to read. And everyone without exception knew how to read. And this interconnection of numbers and letters, and there is a deep meaning in this altogether. I did not understand this before, and therefore no instruction in reading was required for anyone. Parents taught their children to read. There is also a second, most important function of school. The function of secondary school is to free parents for slave labor in factories, plants, mines, roads, and so on. Because if things had continued as they always had been, that is, parents raising children and being with them all day, the father working with his sons on his own household farm, the mother working with her daughters in the household, then who would have built the factories and plants? Molotov called this the pumping of peasants into workers, and he said we pumped 70 million people from peasants into workers. This was his work report. That is, they destroyed peasant households, created schools and kindergartens in order to hand children over there, so that parents would be free all day. And they were driven to perform some function. Someone to unscrew this little bolt, someone to dig here, to pound with a crowbar, someone to do something else. And over several generations, people forgot how to work peasant households. They forgot how to tan hides, prepare livestock for slaughter, make felt boots, grow all sorts of things, engage in everything peasants used to do. And each peasant household was like a small factory where everything was made, from A to Z. There was no division of labor. The principle of division of labor appeared within the framework of creating conditions for industrialization. And this was the 18th century. And then enlightened nobles, having read various vile and cursed writers and poets, began pulling the first peasants out of the household and making small factories on their estates. And peasants were already becoming workers. This was the very beginning of industrialization. And then when England took power over the whole world, the first such event was the Congress of Vienna as a result of the Napoleonic Wars. All the kings and czars were already sitting at the table, and England was leading. Industrialization had already begun. This was Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. May I interject? I just do not quite understand what the peasants read. They did not have newspapers, did not have books. Only idiots read newspapers. Because newspapers contain lies. Everyone knows this. You, as a journalist, should know this better than anyone. Therefore, idiots read lies. All right, but there were no books either? Books were everywhere. Bibles were everywhere, practically universally. People had Bibles. In every church there were Bibles. There were patristic writings, chronicles. For czars, this was made in luxurious form. I will show you in the library what luxurious books are made for czars. They have come down to us now. And for peasants everything was more modest. But it existed practically for everyone. And every peasant child knew the history of mankind. This one which you do not know. Every peasant child knew the norms of relations with God. And that peasant child, not even speaking of adults, could not be tricked by hints that a hospital is good, that a school is good. All of this is bad. It is disgusting. And because it is a place, outsourced, to which children or sick people are handed over. And there they are abused in all sorts of ways. There was not, think about it, not a single hospital in Russes. And by the way, in Greece as well. And in other countries that were Orthodox countries. Because people took care of their sick themselves, they did not hand them over anywhere. And the Lord, the chief healer, Jesus Christ, gave a promise to Christians that you shall lay hands on the sick and they shall be well. But for you all this is incomprehensible, because you are godless. All right, but here is such a question. England seized colonies, and it seized them precisely because it was easy and simple, because people lived, for example, in Africa and in India, basically by agriculture. They did not have weapons and machine guns, and that too is industry. One must also work for one's country so that the country has everything of its own, so that these sanctions... Do you agree? Let us step back half a step that school is evil and hospitals are evil? Or what is the point of continuing if it is like talking to a wall? It is hard for me to agree with that. It just seems to me. Because if even this is not understandable to you, that in these tiled wards it is worse than the Gestapo, all these modern hospitals, and that generally speaking from there they go to the cemetery in pain, universally. That population disposal is pharmaceutical hospitals. If you do not even understand this, then what are you? What is there to talk about? What high matters are there to talk about? Confessional, historical questions. Let us go show you something more primitive, livestock, and so on. Well, at least maternity leave, that is good. It is disgusting. A maternity hospital is a place where children are killed. Abortions are done there. Do you not know that? No. Maternity leave is when there are 3 years of free paid leave for a woman after the maternity hospital. That is disgusting because that means the woman works somewhere. That is, she is a slave to some guy. She works not on her own household, but for her husband and children. So if she has maternity leave, that means she enslaves herself to other men at some factory, plant, or office. Do you understand? And with this maternity leave, she is tied to that even more. That is, by law, she is obliged later to go out and continue to be a slave somewhere away from home. It is disgusting. It is just as disgusting as pensions. Because pensions are a substitute in people's consciousness for children's care for their parents. That is, if there are pensions, then a mother chooses to kill a child by abortion, preferring a pension, or to leave the child alive so that he feeds her. Roughly such a choice. I am primitive, but that is the meaning. You rely either on a pension or on God and on children. And when a person relies on a pension, on the state, that is his choice. Now they are throwing the elderly with these pensions. That is their choice. They chose a pension. They wanted a pension. They made pension contributions. They officially worked somewhere. They killed children by abortions. And now they live badly. They are not paid pensions. They were supposed to be thrown over, and they were thrown over. Because they turn not to God but to the devil for provision in old age. And the devil throws everyone over. His servants throw everyone over. So it should be. Well, I agree. Yes, indeed. If people have one child or no children at all, that means they killed 10 each, with rare exceptions. The only thing is that it is indeed so easy to come to a rural dweller and take everything from him if the land is fertile or there is something good there. Considering that if there are no rockets, tanks, only with that thought. In the Soviet Union, there were many rockets and tanks. There was the most powerful army in the world, and what of it? Piles of scrap metal on which millions of Russian lives were ruined in various gulags, where all this was built and through various collectivizations, for the sake of this cursed weaponry. And what is the use of it? Who got anything from Soviet weaponry? In the early 1990s, CIA employees in uniform walked around the Kremlin. And what did your rockets give you? What did they give anyone? Well, yes, you yourself observed all this. Everything private. Yes. And that is it. No, let us have more weaponry. Not enough. And they also fouled all nature. Because all this industrialization, where one of the main goals is this weaponry, nature is completely destroyed, a bunch of countries. No rivers, just one cesspool. No forests, nothing. An enormous amount of underground minerals were dug out. Fresh water went there, and that is it. But we had rockets. You understood nothing. Everything is already over, and you understood nothing. Here I give the floor to Sergei. They build in order to revive ancient crafts without any of your rockets and everything else, and with their own hands they make what all our ancestors knew how to make for thousands of years, beginning with Adam. And they forgot it, literally over the last 100 years. Thanks to this cursed industrialization and all these rockets. A book is the best teacher. The Bible is the very best teacher. Moses, the evangelists, the prophets. What other teachers do you need? What is wrong with you?